Generative UI versus vibe coding. Who's designing? With generative UI, the AI system decides to generate an interactive element or entire product in response to a user need. Vibe coding is when the users request the AI to build it. Since Andrej Karpathy coined the term vibe coding in early 2025, the concept has taken over the conversation about AI and interfaces. Describe what you want, and the AI builds it. There are many variations of that concept, and all of them are relevant to the design community right now, as they impact both how our teams work and the users they design for. Yeah, I mean, this is something that stresses people out in the sort of development and design communities. It is a new time, and we need to find our places. So hopefully this article will help. But vibe coding is not generative UI, Gen UI. It's a hard thing to say. The difference is about who makes the decision to build an interactive system or component. This distinction gets blurry in practice, and that's exactly why it's worth defining carefully. The line between them determines what we hold the AI accountable for: execution fidelity or design judgment. Okay. Different flavors of AI-generated interfaces. First, some definitions. The landscape of AI-generated and AI-assisted interfaces includes several overlapping concepts. Generative UI refers to interfaces where the AI system decides to produce a visual or interactive element. The system initiates the design. We've been thinking and talking about GenUI's future potential since early 2024, but only recently have examples of true GenUI been appearing in real life. Most of those examples are currently happening within AI chatbots, other than highly experimental ones. Okay. Vibe coding means that the user describes what they want and the AI builds it. But how do you do generative UI? Okay. The user asks the system to create a particular software product, an application, a website, etc., often without specifying any implementation details, specific language or design patterns to be used. Karpathy describes it as a fully surrendering control. Forget that the code even exists. In practice, many people use the term more loosely to describe any AI-driven development, though purists argue that's a misuse. AI-assisted design means using AI-based tools within a professional design workflow, generating wireframes, prototyping variations, or exploring layout options as part of building a product for an end-user audience. So are we saying that GenUI, you're actually letting the AI do more than vibe coding? The system even decides that, yeah, we should do a design here. We need a new product. I'm not sure. In this article, I focus on comparing generative UI and vibe coding specifically. Okay. Okay. So an AI system produces a UI. Was AI used as a tool within the traditional design process? If yes, that's AI-assisted design. So that's mainly what I do when I use AI at work, is I put it into a process step and I try to ask it to do something, maybe generate an image or make it help me with defining requirements based on a user journey, something like that. Who decided to create the UI? Okay, so the AI system decided to create the UI because it would be better than just having text. So it gives you a UI. I wonder what's a good use case for that. When does that happen? Okay, and then if the user initiates the process, that is vibe coding. The user asks the AI to build an interface. And then you can have a vague description or a detailed description. And if it's very detailed, I kind of think that it goes into the same it becomes almost AI assisted design. Okay, I like this image. This is good. Who asks for the design? Either the AI designs an UI element would serve the user better than text, or the user explicitly asks the system to build something. In generative UI, the user asks the question or states a goal, either explicitly in chat or implicitly by their behavior in a product. And the system decides that the response should include one or more interactive elements, such as checkboxes, interactive data visualization, clarification widgets, or full-blown complex interfaces. The user didn't request a checkbox. The AI made a judgment call that the experience would benefit from having one. Okay, so maybe it would be something like asking an AI to list out all the things that I should be doing before 10 o'clock in the morning. And it lists that out, but it also gives me a graphical user interface in terms of checkboxes where I can click something, and that would be GenUI. Okay. I learned something today. That judgment call is the defining act of GenUI. The system assessed the situation and determined that the best response would include one or more visual interactive UI element. This is a design decision made in real time by the AI. Vibe coding works differently. The user initiates and directs the construction. For example, build me a London trip planner app. Create a dashboard for my expenses. Make a quiz about European capitals. The user knows they want an interface and asks for one. The AI's role is in execution, translating the user's intent to a working artifact. That's valuable, but it's a different kind of work. Yeah, that's definitely different. It's weird, that distinction between using AI to build you something that you've defined, or getting presented with something that will solve a problem. Okay. The specification spectrum within vibe coding. Even within vibe coding, there's a further dimension. How much does the user specify and how much do they delegate? For example, consider the prompt, build me a trip planner. This leaves the AI significant room to make structural and strategic choices, layout, interaction patterns, information hierarchy. Yeah, okay, so basically you get something, but you don't know what it is. It's just a trip planner. I think one interesting part of this is, even though you get presented with one option, and I think this is the danger with vibe coding, when you get presented with an option like this and it looks so good, you have a tendency, I find, to start thinking that this is what I asked for. It's not. There would be a million other ways to do a trip planner as opposed to this, but because you've been presented with this version of something, that makes it so this is what you think you want to design. And I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses with using generative AI to do design early in the process, or as a concept generation step, is that you get locked into, for example, like something simple like having these buttons at the top here. I'm not sure that's what the optimal place for a new trip or a share button. Maybe it is. Maybe that is a standard way of doing it. But I think just because you have been shown this one way of doing things, you kind of get locked in to using those design elements and those ways of doing it. I find that makes me kind of like a little bit sad almost. It takes away from the profession. Okay, but compare that to this prompt. Build me a trip planner with a 3-column layout. Left column is fixed position, interactive map using Mapbox with custom pin color coded by activity type. And then it goes on and on and on with design decisions. And I mean, this is kind of what I'm asking for. If you do it like this, probably you've sketched it out beforehand, or you have a very clear idea. But preferably you would have sketched it out and you could see that, okay, I want to go in this direction, now build this for me. This version leaves very little up to the AI system. It's executing a designer's vision. Most people cannot and would not try to imagine or specify this level of detail to reach such an outcome. Yeah, and this is where designers can definitely collaborate with UI to make something that is really cool. I don't know. I find these examples to be good because this looks like every AI generated thing that I have ever seen in terms of interface, whereas this actually looks like something that has been made by a person. It kind of has and it hasn't, but I find it to be such a cool difference just by making sure that you use your design knowledge and you sort of apply that to the prompt. You can actually get some of that human touch, and I think that's interesting. In both cases, the user initiated the construction, but the degree of design judgment the AI exercises varies enormously. This range of specification on the vibe coding side of the line is why some people get confused by the distinction between vibe coding and generative UI. I think that's interesting. This version of vibe coding I can kind of get behind as a quick way of doing things if you've done the concepting beforehand. I like that. The problem with the build your own everything argument. Vibe coding enthusiasts believe that AI will let everyone build their own custom software for everything they need. And this is very tiresome. And I don't know if this was true, I think you would see a lot more people trying to get a lot more software out there. And this narrative was blamed for a big drop in software stocks in February. I can imagine, but I don't think that's the right take. I don't think you should start selling off your software stock. Why pay for Slack when your company can just generate its own version? Why subscribe to project management tools when you can vibe code one that fits your exact workflow? I think back to the hundreds of user research sessions I've conducted and observed where I've seen firsthand how bad most people are at identifying and articulating what they want from a digital product or service. Experienced designers might find it easy to describe the interface they want to build. Most people do not. And I think this is true, but I don't think it's all up to the interface in this case. I think even finding function, even finding what it is you want to build is not as easy as just writing down a wish list and then presenting that to a computer. There's a lot of work going into defining features and figuring out how to do things and what are really relevant things that you want to have in software. And then on top of that, you have the difficulty in describing what you want from a user interface. So there's a lot of things in the design process that are kind of hard to pin down. And I agree with this. Most people don't know how to build software or define software. But I think there's also a third level, which is the sort of technical side of this, where it's not easy for people to ask for the right levels of security or data integrity for something. If you have a Slack version that you vibe coded, but it's not safe, that's going to be really scary. It's going to be very, very hard to prompt something that is secure and it works well and what that you can build on top of. So I think also on the coding side, it's just difficult. I'm not saying that it's impossible, and I'm sure generative AI can help. It's not that it's not useful. It's just not this, everyone can just build their own software. As it is now, I don't know how it's going to be in 5 years or 5 months, but right now, I don't see that, and I don't see this technology getting there anytime soon. Vibe coding assumes a users who can think in terms of apps, dashboards, and interaction patterns. That's a meaningful prerequisite, and it's not on one most people meet. GenUI serves the rest. Help me plan my trip is a prompt anyone might type. If a system responds by generating a custom itinerary tool rather than a paragraph of text, someone who would never think to vibe code a trip planner still gets the benefit of an interface designed for their situation. That's the promise of generative UI. Not that the AI becomes a better code generator, but that it becomes a designer. One that makes the interface decisions so the user doesn't have to know what they need, let alone try to envision and articulate what it should be, which is extremely hard for people. I mean, yes, but it only works for very narrow use cases. If someone asks the generative AI to build something that is software, it doesn't work. If someone asks the AI to build some or to answer a question or respond to a problem that I'm having specifically, how should I plan my pickup route so that I pick up all the kids going to football practice? And the AI could build something that helps in that specific scenario, but if you would try to generalize that, you would soon run into problems that are kind of, this is not a really good product idea territory. It's very hard to sell something like that, for example, because you can't build something that scales to more than yourself. This is why when people have product ideas and they come to you and they ask you like, oh, I have this idea, couldn't you evaluate that for me? This is why most of the time that's kind of a little bit iffy question to get, because you don't want to let people down and say that, oh, I don't believe that your idea is commercially viable. This is the reason for that. So I don't think this scales, and that is one aspect of this. There's also an argument for specialized software that the build your own everything narrative overlooks. Part of the value of a dedicated company building communication or product management software is the institutional knowledge they accumulate from years of user research, iterative refinement, observing how the tool performs across thousands of different organizational contexts. LLMs don't inherently have that depth baked in. The idea that every team will vibe code its own Slack replacement feels wasteful when the real value of those tools comes from design maturity that no ad hoc prompt can replicate. I don't know that is the problem. I think there are enough descriptions of good communication software that you could actually get a good description of a communication software. Building is hard because it's so complex, and the computer can't really handle that as it is now. There's too much just randomness baked into the whole thing, and it doesn't really work like that. I find that when I start a project using AI, and then when it comes to a certain point, the context window is sort of, you reach a peak and you can't go any further with that. So it's really hard to build products, and generative AI doesn't really help you with a lot of that stuff. This is where GenUI carries a higher design burden than vibe coding. When the user specifies what they want, the AI is accountable for execution quality. Does the thing work as described? When the AI decides what to generate, it's accountable for the design decisions. Right now, if you leave design decisions up to an AI system, you tend to get generic looking outputs, random layout choices that don't quite make sense, content errors, visual complexity without clear purpose. GenUI's success will be measured not by how impressive the generated elements look, but how well the AI reads the moment. And it can't. It can't read the moment. It can't understand things, and that makes this sort of hard. I don't believe GenUI will be useful for anything that is more complex than the things that was stated earlier in the article, with checklists and simple widgets, basically. I don't think generative UI will be a product creator. In the near future, we will start to see the AI customizations moving beyond the UI to accelerate and customize interfaces without the visual sparkle icons or beta features callouts. This is closer to how Sarah Gibbons and I originally imagined generative UI. Essentially, this is what now is being called invisible AI. Invisible AI is when AI-driven customization happens behind the scenes of an existing product. The system adjusts the interface based on user behavior, context, and goals without the user explicitly asking for anything. Think of a productivity tool that surfaces the relevant templates before you know to search for it. The AI is doing the design work, but it's woven into the product so seamlessly that the user just experiences a faster, more relevant interface. I don't know. I don't know that it's a wise thing to let go of so much control in that. I'm not sure. I think that's going to be hard. I think a controlled interface has a lot of value. Yeah. And where the evaluation challenges get to the sharpest. If users never ask for an interface change and might not even notice one happened, how do we know it was the right call? We don't, and I don't think that's one of the reasons why this won't work for anything. I think chatbots might be the only place where that can be acceptable because it's so loose. Like, do you want that loose experience in enterprise software? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe there are special cases. Maybe you have like a checklist app where the AI sort of changes the way the checklist works based on what we're looking at. I don't know. Vibe coding and generative UI fail in different ways. Vibe coding fails when execution is poor. The thing doesn't match intent. Broken features, misinterpreted layouts, a trip planner that ignores half your specifications. The users knew what they wanted, the AI just didn't deliver it. Generative UI fails when judgment is poor. The wrong element was generated, or it shouldn't have been generated at all. An unsolicited interactive dashboard nobody needed in a design is a design failure, even if it's technically flawless. These are fundamentally different failure modes and they demand different evaluation approaches. What is quality in this context? For both vibe coding and generative UI, quality is measured in how well the system addresses the user need. For a vibe coded artifact, high quality means matching user intent while being usable. A vibe coder asks for a quiz app and can tell whether the result is what they had in mind. I would argue that they can't. They can tell whether they like the result, but knowing whether it was what they had in mind is much harder. For generative UI, quality is whether the response gets the user closer to solving their problem in a way that is as frictionless as possible. It's harder to assess because the user had no prior expectation and may have nothing to compare against. They asked the question, the system decided an interactive chart was the right response. But was it the right response? The user might not have the context to know. This means generative UI needs to be evaluated more like traditional UIs through user research, task completion metrics, and satisfaction signals. Not just did it render correctly. I don't think I agree. How do you do that? How do you evaluate something like generative UI and hold it to the same standards as a completely controlled experience? You can't. You have to have that randomness and the weirdness be a feature of what you're building. Otherwise, generative UI probably isn't the correct methodology for building a product. Again, I think in chat interfaces, this might work. It might actually be great. I would love for Claude to give me random checklists or things to help me sort through and clarify. And you can sort of have that go off to the side in a project or something. But I don't like that I don't like evaluating it more like traditional UIs. I don't think that's a good take. Finally and crucially, the audience for generative UI is broader than that for vibe coding. Vibe coding empowers people who can articulate what they want to build. Generative UI benefits everyone, including users who don't think to ask for an interface element. That broader reach comes with a higher design burden. The system must make good decisions on behalf of people who can't tell it what they want, which is most people. Yeah, and again, I don't agree with that. I think we have to think differently around what we're using generative UI for, and it can't be to build better controlled experiences, because it's not. It's not a controlled experience. If we want generative UI, it needs to be quirky and weird and sort of fluent and flexible. And the cost of having the wrong element must be very low. It puts a lot of pressure on the user. For example, if you get showed a dashboard with, you have to be able to verify that the data shown in the dashboard is correct, which is again hard, which is always the problem with generative AI. So I don't know. But I'm really glad that I got to read this article, because generative UI is something I haven't thought about before, and I think it's something that we should think about more. If you watched this far into the video, it would really help me if you would subscribe to the channel or give the video a like. It's really helpful, and it gives me sort of an indication of where I need to go with the channel.